So for a few years, I mean, before the whole COVID traumas, we did do quite a bit of live streaming from the Storytelling Festival. And we felt that was an important way to open up the festival to new audiences, different audiences. We didn't charge for that. It was like a kind of added extra. But what, of course, we quite quickly found was that you really had to think about what the quality of the streaming was. So we've worked a lot. We worked a lot with Sandy McGee from the channel 71A, who is particularly interested in traditional music. We worked with him to develop a streaming model that was multi-camera. So you weren't sort of sticking a camera in front of something and kind of simplistically and literally then pitching that out. There was a little bit of kind of live editing going on in terms of camera angles and so forth. So when we face the real challenges this year, we had that little bit of experience in the background. And then right away, really from very suddenly in March, when our live program at the Storytelling Centre bit the dust, we had to start thinking about platforms. So an obvious one, as we are speaking and chatting now for storytelling, is Zoom. And part of the reason for that is that you can retain a certain degree of intimacy on the Zoom medium. And you know that we always appeal to the old proverb, a story should be told eye to eye, mind to mind, heart to heart. So there's a little of that is possible. But the other thing that is possible that's been very successful is that you can have a genuine conversation. You can have participation in Zoom. So a lot of our participative sessions like Good Crack and Storytelling Cafes, we're able to move to Zoom with people being able to join in to contribute a story or perhaps a song or a poem or whatever in the mix. And we've really established quite a strong pattern for that now, and quite a number of our local clubs in different parts of Scotland have switched on to that mode as well. However, Zoom is really difficult for music. So that was our experience. And, if a real quality interactive experience between music and storytelling, we felt needed a greater degree of pre-recording, a greater degree of editing, and different options of broadcast channels, and an extraordinarily high rate of knots and quite pressurized rate of knots. We had to start thinking about how some of the commission performances for the festival involving storytelling and music, like, for example, the JSO event, which is part of our Voyage Commission, Scotland, a Nation Shaped by the Sea. So that was involving Ian Stephen, the storyteller from Lewis, and Mike Vass as an accompanying storyteller, and also a visual dimension. So, and then there were many other different variations and combinations. So what we settled in the end is on using a platform called Crowdcast. Now, I wouldn't argue that Crowdcast is necessarily superior, say, to a YouTube, a pre-recorded in YouTube, but it does have facilities like captioning to give access. It has a chat and comments facility, and it has a Q&A situation. So what we found was that although this was a broadcast event, we were able to create some of the conditions and circumstances that you would have in a festival performance. So it was at a specific time, although there's also then a replay function. So you're not, you haven't lost it in that, but there's a specific time and a specific audience gathered who had the opportunity not only to comment, but to participate in a question and answer discussion session after the event. And all of those features and those aspects seem to go down really, really well. So, if you're thinking about that idea of a kind of blended, in a sense, you're looking at, if you're confined to the online, what are the features of the online experience that can maybe offer just some of those benefits and attractions that people value in we're together at this time on this occasion. But then you've still got that replay function. So that was a journey, and just a couple of observations to put into the mix of your discussion. I think that we are going to get back to live performance. I think that will come. I think it will probably begin at the small scale, at the local level, as we get into next early summer. As if you like, we'll pass a year of this pandemic and we'll just begin to see some benefit from the vaccine process. And I think that one of the things that we're thinking a lot about is how can we find ways to encourage a sort of grassroots local recovery of the live, because I think that that's probably going to be easier than large scale broadcast and live performance. But as David sort of said in his intro there, I don't think that we're going to be abandoning the digital aspect, because I think that it is clear. So in the example of the Storytelling Festival, we had people who would never have got to a live performance. We had a much more international, we've always had an international audience at the Storytelling Festival, maybe about 20%. We haven't got all the figures. I think that's gone up to 30 or 35 this year. So, and it's not just with international thing, it's people who, for family circumstances or health circumstances beyond the COVID situation, would never get out to a live event in an urban centre. So that's all important. And so we've got to find a way to hang on to some of the sort of gains and opportunities there. But I think the complexity of it all is that to do a really successful, effective online event involves different techniques and approaches from doing a successful live event. And every medium, every platform brings its own strengths and weaknesses. And it's going to be a more complicated life. And musicians, I think, should sort of understand this. I've always loved simplicity in music. That's what attracts me to traditional music. But once you get skilled, experienced musicians involved, there's different tracks being recorded. So there's different ways those have to be mixed and laid, and grounds and different other lines, and how that then interacts with a spoken word or sung element. So all those things that go on in the technical boxes of tricks that have been involved in larger scale traditional music gigs for quite some time, coming to play plus plus on a digitally recorded and digitally edited. I don't want to say musicians are difficult people. I'm not on that line in any shape or form, but there is a wee perfectionist streak going on sometimes in there, and in my humble experience, but I don't make any great claims for that. And yeah, so it's there's extra layers of work. It's what it comes down to essentially to generate. So you could still have a look at the JSO. Then there's an amazing thing with Alan McDonald and Aidan O'Rourke doing the Berlin of Clanranald in Gaelic, the great 18th century Gaelic epic poem. That's quite musically complex, but beautifully put across, and you can get those on the www.sisf.org.uk replay function if you're interested, just to see. But I'm not in any way saying that we have found the solutions. I think what we've experienced is the great diversity of options and the kind of ingenuity I think that we need, and teamwork, collaborative teamwork, in order to take best advantage of what these different media offer. So the word I would kind of be more into almost is a kind of hybrid rather than blended. I'm not sure that blended is quite the right word, because I don't think you can mix the two things indiscriminately. But I think there's a possibility of kind of a hybrid situation where we're using digital means and also recovering a degree of live. And who knows, maybe in the longer term, what we're really doing is expanding the creative toolbox. I think we've got the ability to do that. And hopefully that will stand us in quite good stead when we get into this recovery phase, and where I believe that traditional arts have got a bigger role than absolutely ever to play in where we're going into the future. So I think that's me.